Welcome to the Hyper Growth Zone podcast. This is your go-to resource for personal growth, mastering communication, and influencing and persuasion techniques that will help you unleash the full potential of yourself and others. Here is your host, Alex Morgan.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 19 of the Hyper Growth Zone podcast. My name's Alex Morgan, and I'm a master trainer of hypnosis and NLP. And today we have another special guest, Justin Kopet. And I was just speaking to him, and he said something very interesting. He's trying to master all of his talents between business, health, wealth, peace of mind, and relationships. So welcome, Justin. Thanks for coming on.
Alex, it's a pleasure. I greatly appreciate you having me on your show.
Yeah, absolutely. So just with what I said there about mastering, kind of all areas of your life, we were talking a little about this before. Can you kind of just go into that a bit? Why you wanted to start kind of just mastering everything?
Yeah, that's a great question. It was a couple years ago when I first started like the entrepreneurial journey, and the very first event I ever went to was like a real estate event. And the guy up on stage consistently embedded suggestions such as, I have it all. Everything goes my way. And I openly accept that type of suggestion. And through the process, have been working on removing those limiting beliefs, those things that have come up that have prevented me in the past from having it all, from everything going my way to where I really prefer and am working on having everything go my way as I progress throughout life.
That's cool. I think you may have went to an event for the same person I went to some events as well, because one of the big suggestions that he had or kept trying to embed was actually it works. He wasn't trying, he was actually doing it, was I deserve it all and more. And one of the other things is why just go big when you could go big or go bigger? So these are a couple. And before we were talking a little bit about kind of some routines you have and stuff like that with recently you've gotten into things like biohacking. And can you explain a little bit about that to everyone that's listening if they're new to the topic?
Yeah, I would say I am not an expert in the field. However, that's why I'm seeking expert advice. So Gary Brecka, partner with 10X Health, and I was able to jump on a 10-week masterclass with him, along with get into some other things along that. However, with this masterclass, some of the things that he would recommend is like exposure to cold and getting yourself out in the morning on grass, bare feet on grass, to where I came back from New York City this weekend, and that was the very first thing I did. And why that is important is because what he was saying, and it makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of 5G antennas, stuff like that, EMF, electromagnetic frequencies, going on in today's society, and it's only going to continue to grow to where when one is able to ground themselves, touch grass with their bare feet, it helps remove that in simple terms. For scientific terms, I mean, there's other words and ways to go about it. However, again, I'm not a health expert, nor is this health advice. This is just something that, obviously helps me and I enjoy doing, along with like right away when I get up in the morning, I'll do breath work outside, 3 rounds of kind of a Wim Hof style of breath, along with when I can. Minnesota is kind of a pain in the butt right now with it being so cloudy and it moving into the winter months, is that first light. So that first light is very good for those, just because you get a lot more nutrients and it kind of resets your sleep schedule and helps you get on track with it that way.
Okay, I was just thinking when you were talking about the grounding and everything, bare feet on the grass, what would you say? You were talking about sleep. Are you noticing any other mental and physical benefits of going along with that?
I would say I definitely feel better. I would say, I don't know if this is truth. It almost feels like when I wear an Apple Watch, because that's so close to the skin, that I feel as if I do not get as good of sleep. I've been trying to track it. Yet again, it could just be an unconscious thing that got suggested. That's like, EMF is not good for you. Now it's like everything around EMF is now not good. However, I just have to go out there and prove it to myself on if it works or if it doesn't work. And I'm kind of in that trial and error process. So that's what we're working on figuring out. I would say, like, when I do put my feet on the grass for about 6 minutes each day, I do feel really good. Tied in with the breath work, it's kind of the routine itself versus just one of them.
Okay, cool. And you said like kind of getting exposure to cold. So obviously you also mentioned Minnesota. So most people listening, if you're not from the US at least, Minnesota gets very cold and the winter's here. So how cold is it, or should you be exposed to, would you say, in a healthy or beneficial way?
Yeah, so some of the stuff I've been learning, it's been actually very nice. So yesterday was about 50 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm not exactly sure how that replicates over to Celsius. The snow will probably be coming, within the next couple of weeks, to where it then kind of averages anywhere from January, February, I would say from 0 to 32 degrees, which is in Fahrenheit, which sucks in my opinion. For the cold exposure, the stuff like that, from what I learned was some people try to go 10, 15 minutes in the cold where it's like, that's not necessarily necessary, because you get all the benefits by being in something that's around 40 some degrees or less. 42 degrees or less is what I believe Gary was saying. And you only have to be in there for about 3 minutes. So before I got on this podcast, I took a 3-minute cold shower. Again, the pipes of water here in Minnesota can stay pretty cold. So I would guess that it's very close to that 42-degree mark. And that will last for probably the next 4 hours. It's very like a dopamine stimulation type of feeling, to where it helps me flow, especially more so when it comes to work or some sort of performance activity that I'm doing.
Okay, so you're kind of flowing, so you're more, sounds like you're saying that you would be more focused, let's say, for the next 3-4 hours or whatever after you do this. So how does that, are you noticing anything with your productivity then since you've been doing this?
Yeah, I would say this has been the biggest thing, and the biggest takeaway with all of this biohacking stuff is the cold exposure. Just because, again, I feel very focused and it's very easy to go and get to work and get things moving and really complete the steps and things that I have listed out for the day to accomplish them and complete those tasks.
Okay, that's awesome. I haven't done the whole exposure to cold, so I'll have to look into this. It sounds interesting, especially 4 hours of extreme focus. That sounds really rewarding. So, besides, let's say this was kind of biohacking, so a little bit of health and having that peace of mind you were talking about. What things are you doing then for the, let's say, the other side, the business and the wealth, or like building relationships along those lines? What would you suggest to everyone?
I would say with all of that, one thing that I have written down to the left of me for those of you who are watching this or listening is focus is currency. So how I translate that is like focus as in the people I'm networking in and networking with. Obviously create new business relationships, new business deals. That's why I love going to events. For business, it's all about, for me personally, is like developing one skill very well to where it's very self-sustainable, being in the right groups around the right people, going back to that networking thing to expand, branch out, and conquer new avenues of wealth is what I'm currently working on. Is it right? Is it not right? I mean, that's what I'm trialing and erroring right now to test, to figure out, just because that's some of the knowledge that I've been given, and just plan to, again, put it to my own test. And if it's going to work, I'm going to double down on it. If it's not going to work, we will continuously pivot so that way it can be figured out.
Yeah, that's interesting because someone I follow closely on Facebook, they actually built a lot of their business based off of just going to events and building those relationships there, and getting clients, and those relationships lead to other relationships and things like that. So I know you said you went to a real estate event. are you doing any other, trainings, or what are the events you're currently focused on?
So right now I have done a lot of like sales trainings these past 2 years and a few other like mental programming trainings to where this next couple months here, I've really just decided and am pretty much taking it to myself to reevaluate all the information that I've learned over the last couple years and actually apply it. And why that is again, the coach that I was working with from the sales training program that I was in just recently, it just came to an end. And their suggestion and advice was saying, hey, like, I understand you're very ambitious, you're very hungry to grow and expand. Have you ever like thought about, kind of chewing on that information before just going all in on that next thing? And I'm like, you know what? I have not. And I've been kind of thinking that to myself. So I think that's what I'm going to do. So currently, I'm not in a bunch of training programs as I'm used to. However, I do still read a lot of books, stuff like that. I've read a lot of really good books that have really helped tie in with the knowledge from those past trainings that I've done. So the learning, I would say it never stops. However, for the networking and stuff like that is kind of on a pause right now, just for a little bit.
I think that that's something that I really agree with because, I have certified trainings and things myself, and there's a lot of people that are in the same field, or coaches, trainers, whoever they are, and they'll have different levels of their training. And someone goes through the first one, and most trainers are like, you got to get in the second one right away. And then you got to get in the third one. Let's say there's 3 levels, where I'm kind of the same way. I'm like, hey, you just went through a really groundbreaking training for yourself. You put yourself to limits you probably didn't even know you were going to do. Why don't you just let that like marinate, sink in, like integrate into your unconscious mind, and like see what that does for you. And then once you kind of, can start focusing on exactly what you want to focus on, then if it fits in, take the second training and then spend the time, money, and energy into it. Because I think if we go to a training and we're not really ready to put in, the time is huge and the energy is huge. Of course, like, we're going to have money for it or not. However, if
Mhm.
we're not putting in like that time and that energy, then we're not going to get, the same results as if we did. So I totally agree with you with that point, because I think it's super important. So everyone listening, really think about, be kind of deliberate sometimes with your next moves. You don't always have to just be jumping into something just because, they want to upsell you on the next course or what it is. Kind of take time to make some different moves. So thanks for bringing that up, because a lot of people, they do want people to just keep jumping in and jumping in and jumping in without actually like implementing it. Because for me, I'd rather have someone wait and then they get results. And then once they get results, guess what? They're going to tell everyone, and then they're going to want to come anyway. So if you just keep training people and they never have a chance to actually get those results, then it's not going to kind of come to fruition in this sense. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up. That's really important. So you mentioned this was, a sales training. Is this something, you're interested in sales and things like this, or how do you kind of work that into your reality at the moment, what you learned?
You brought up a lot of great points as well. Not only like was I not implementing what I was learning, I would say simultaneously I'm implementing, always consistently taking action on it. With that being said, when I did take that break, it has allowed some of the biggest breakthroughs that I've had yet, which are exactly what one is after, especially when doing, you know, the mental side of things that one, who prefers to go internal and experience that can then reap those rewards. So, how I implement sales is I also generate leads for businesses, certain types of businesses, things like that. My own business, the type of leads are not really that important. What's important is just being able to speak to those people that come in, because along the process, it's just been a trial and error that has then created an outcome to where one can consistently say just book calls on demand, which is where I would say I'm at. And it's very nice because it's like, okay, I got all these calls coming in and all these bookings booked. Now, how can I influence and move that person to actually use this product and service that I know can truly serve them because of the results that have been created prior to? And that's the biggest issue, or was the biggest issue, and is something that I'm continuously getting better at, if that somewhat answers your question.
Yeah, that definitely helps, because when we can influence and persuade, especially starting off with ourselves, like in order for us to actually get the results that we want, I believe like way more than 100% that we have to be able to influence and persuade ourselves first. Because if we don't believe what we're selling or how we feel or anything like that, I mean, how could another person sitting right across from us believe us or think that they could actually help us? So this is a really important point. Like, how can we use these, skills to, influence and persuade people, because it's something that they may actually need. So if we can do it, of course, taking into the account that, it's beneficial for everyone, I think this, really matters. And, I done quite a different trainings and things on sales myself. So I'm always thinking of different ways to influence myself and others. So that's a great point. I wanted to bring something up that's totally different. I saw on one of your stories the other day, I think it was on Facebook, and you must have been in New York or something. And I don't know exactly what it said, but it was something had happened, like you had gotten, some sort of, I don't know if it was credit card rewards or something like this. And then you had like a poll in there, like, was this by luck or was this by design? So for the people listening who may think like success is luck, or like, how can we actually design this? What would you say you mean by, luck versus design? Can you tap into that a bit? I think it'd be really interesting for people to hear your thoughts on this.
Great question. So I've kind of thought about this. So I think luck is like unconscious incompetence. By design is you're consciously aware of that competence that's going on. And what I equal that to is automation. Your life is automating itself for success in everything you do. To where and why, what's funny is I had a flight. This is how the whole story lines up, is I had a flight at 3 a.m. It's about 8 p.m. Well, I had to leave at 3 a.m., I guess you could say, to get to my 5:25 flight. And it's about 8 p.m. at night. I'm like thinking, I only want to take a shower and just go to bed, right? So I'm just kind of looking online, a couple of the places that were, some of the cheapest options, just because it was like, I'm not really sleeping there for long. I'm just in and out. I basically want to take a shower and go to bed for those couple hours and then be able to get up and take a cold shower to get the day started. So I'm kind of looking through the first couple options that were the cheapest. Those rooms were already booked. I'm like, okay, whatever. The next one I kept kind of searching. I'm like, all right, this one's, a reasonable price. Click on it. It was an apartment. And I'm thinking, well, I better call these guys just to make sure that it's not like, you can only check in at 4 o'clock. And if you miss the 4 o'clock time, there's no checking in. So I called them just to kind of prepare. And the guy's like, nope, if you check in, I'll be here. I'm like, awesome, man. We'll see you soon, my friend. And I show up, and I saw in the pictures, when I was scrolling through it online, there was a balcony looking out into the city. I show up, I was like, do any of these rooms have balconies? He says, yes. I'm going to upgrade you. Right away, he tells me this. I'm like, well, God bless you, my friend. He said, yes, I'm going to upgrade you into the penthouse. I'm like, even better. There's a little more to the story. And when I got up there, it was incredible, completely beautiful. However, it just kind of goes back to the thing of, is one unconsciously incompetent, or are they in a situation where they're automating their internals to constantly be in alignment with success?
It's a really interesting point, because either way, most of what we do is unconscious. So 95 of things are unconscious. It's some sort of program or habit or behavior or some sort of self-talk that we have just running, in our mind at all times. So it's actually pretty easy once you kind of get in there and mentally program yourself with other programs or behaviors or whatever, that you could end up doing, these types of things. So what else have you, as you're running on automation here, what else has happened that you noticed and you were like, wow, that was probably because of this automation that I have running and wonderful things are happening for me?
Everything has just been tied up in a nice little bow. I would say, again, with taking a break from the trainings that I've done in the past to right now, just because I said this on my podcast the other week. It was, I called my mom and asked her if she would be able to pick up a pie pan because I've been baking some apple pies, right? And where she goes to get this pie pan, they're just giving away for free. They're giving away the pie pans for free. And I just counted that as another small little win that's continuously, stacking up in my favor. And it's not like they're big, massive wins. They're just small little wins. First automating those. So then those bigger things like, getting a free upgrade to a penthouse or going to New York City and then coming back, say, even richer than when you left is another maybe unconscious win that one would call that. So at least in my book for this period of time is the win. So I just point it back to mastering and understanding the internals that go on there, along with being in alignment with something that may be outside of us, a source of a higher power. I think his name is, let's see here, David Hawkins. Sorry, I had to turn around to look at my books. However, in the book Power versus Force, he talks about those that believe in a higher power and surrender to that higher power, then elevate in that realm of consciousness to where those things begin to appear more and more. And I would say that's how it's been working out currently.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's funny because one of the guests I had on recently, she said that she tells herself, like, I get free things all the time. She's also, guess what? I get free things all the time. And it could be something, she didn't go into detail. It could be something so small. One of the things that I do that's so small is like, I just go out and walk around outside and just notice if you look at it, it's busy on the street. I live in the city, but if you actually like look around and just like notice things, it's actually like an amazing place. You find all sorts of amazing things to look at, hear, feel, if you're just aware of different things out in the world. So, I mean, it could be anything. Vacations obviously are amazing. So that's awesome that you're working it into that. I don't think I have too much else. I think you brought up another good point though about like a consciousness level. And I think it's important for people out there to understand that there's different levels of consciousness that we're actually going to evolve through as we think differently. It doesn't mean that it's like you have to make a certain amount of money to be in a different level so much. It's more just how we evolve in our thinking and how we think, not just us, but all the things around. And so I think you had something too that was really interesting was you had another reel where you were talking like if something like big, super big, like a big event that's covered by the whole world is actually happening in the world. Like, was it because of something we did, or is it something like bigger that happened? Can you explain a bit about that as well?
Yeah, and that's kind of how this whole episode transpired into was from that reel. Yeah, what I said was something along the lines, if no one outside of you is real, then who say creates those wars that are going on in Ukraine, Russia, Palestine, Israel? Now, God bless all those places, first of all. However, how I mean by that is, and what I mean by that is, again, it's a level of responsibility. Because if you were to observe that, what I just said from an outside perspective and view it as, nobody actually truly is outside of you, is real, and you are the creator of that. Granted, again, this is a big responsibility jump. And some it won't resonate with, some it's going to resonate very well with. And that's just why I brought it up, because if you were to observe that and say those people outside of you were not actually real, then you are creating those that are outside of you from your observations. So I hope that helps all who are listening right now fully understand that and become very much so aware of it.
Yeah, I think generally too, like just the word responsibility, whether or not we're taking responsibility for something as big as that, I think that one of the first things that we have to do to be on the path to success or getting things that we want is we essentially have to take responsibility for everything in our life.
Mhm.
So even the good things, even the bad things. I went through plenty of, failed relationships. I went bankrupt at one time. And the first thing you want to do is, kind of, well, hey, this person was involved too. And then once I started doing trainings and stuff, I was like, no, I need to take responsibility for all of these things. And now that basically gives you your personal power. You're not giving your power to choose how you feel or do anything to anyone else. So responsibility is a big thing. I think if everyone was just responsible for, themselves and learning and, taking, day by day, going for success, just being responsible for their actions, the world would be, a much better place. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would say it probably comes back to some of those that are listening now, right? They're here because they have some sort of interest in, this show and what you do with your profession and how you help people. And again, are they getting the results they want? Many like to justify and point fingers, playing the victim card. Now, I would just encourage those that are listening to, again, take that responsibility upon themselves. And if you thought about jumping in, you might as well. I mean, that is what you're here for, right? You're here to help and obviously help automate some of those processes and systems so they can experience a lot more wins by understanding some easy techniques and processes and systems that will allow them to take that responsibility very easily and effortlessly. So that's what I would encourage those people to do.
Yeah, that sounds great. And just one other thing before just to add to that, so everyone can hear it, is a lot of people think of like putting in so much effort externally on things, like they have to work hard, they have to hustle, they have to grind and do all these things to get what they want, which, okay, to a certain extent, we have to put in effort and resources, time, money, energy, things like this. However, if we really focus on putting the effort inside or into our unconscious mind, this is going to lead us, this is going to automate what we can achieve once we get those programs in and everything. So I think this is another point that's really important just based on that. Do you have anything else that you want to add, or just give a little info about what you're working on and where people can find you if they want to get in touch with you?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, the internal work is a lot easier than you think, for sure. And everyone should be doing that internal work because it's going to help you become a better version of yourself, which you all listening deserve 100%. Now, some of you, if you like what I spoke about, you can check out my podcast, Justin Kopet's Journey, Apple and Spotify. I am Justin Kopet on IG. And then sometimes people add me as a friend on Facebook. Otherwise, that's mainly where I kind of hang out and put my stuff, and working on a few other things that just I keep to myself for right now, because we're working on perfecting them to be able to give to those that decide that they want to join.
Cool. Well, you heard it, everyone. If you want to get in touch with Justin, yeah. So thanks for coming on. Justin, and everyone. Thanks for listening. Wherever you're listening, go ahead and rate the podcast so we can get this out to as many people as possible. And we'll go ahead and we'll see you on the next episode.